Hello and welcome back to my channel. Jacob here, and I'm going to be talking about Ghoul by Brian Keene. I don't know if you guys can see that. There it is. Fun fact, this is the first Brian Keene book I've ever read. Now, I don't know if that's the only thing I've ever read by Brian Keene, because he has written several comics. Actually, he's written for a lot of comics, and I read comics voraciously, and until I would say the last 2 or 3 years, I never paid attention to comic writers or even the illustrators or artists. I just read the comic and went from story arc to story arc. That has changed. I am now more interested in following certain artists and writers. So maybe that's just a thing that changes once you get older. I don't know. But there is a good chance that I read him before finding out about Ghoul and reading one of his novels. Since then, which, I mean, 7 years ago, this was the first book of his I read. So it's been a while, and I've obviously read a whole lot of Brian Keene books since then, because luckily he is a pretty prolific author and has published with a wide variety of both large and small presses, and his stuff is usually easier to find. I'm sure there's some harder out-of-print stuff out there that might be difficult to get your hands on, but it's not like trying to track down Richard Lehman stuff, which I've kind of hit a roadblock on, which if you've came into this channel watching Richard Lehman content, that is why some of it has been so slow, because it's been very difficult for me to finish my Richard Lehman reading challenge, because I've not been able to really get my hands on all of Lehman's books, or even find downloads of dubious legality of a lot of those books. And I don't really advocate for pirating at this point in my life, because I can afford to buy stuff. It was a lot different when I was younger. But when it comes to harder to find and out-of-print stuff, I will use it as a last resort, and I am not ashamed of that, because I think all authors should be read, and if their stuff was once in print and they're dead and they are no longer in print, you know, it's almost a victimless crime at that point. But that was a weird tangent, so now let's jump back into Ghoul by Brian Keene, which is a really good book. And if this is where you're going to stop the video right now, then let me just tell you to read this book out and find a copy, buy an ebook version, whatever, but read this book. Yeah, so now I'll actually get into the review. It says, June 1984, Timmy Greco, let me know in the comments, is looking forward to summer vacation, taking it easy and hanging out with his buddies. Instead, his summer will be filled with terror and a life and death battle against a nightmarish creature that few will believe even exists. Timmy has learned that the person who's been unearthing fresh graves in the cemetery isn't a person at all. It's a thing, and it's after Timmy and his friends. If Timmy hopes to live to see September, he'll have to escape the Ghoul. Now, Brian Keene uses the Ghoul as it's kind of talked about in like Middle Eastern legends, in which it's like this demonic underground creature that eats the dead. They're like cursed by God. It's a lot. The book will explain some of it, but like all super evil creatures, it also wants to breed and have more super evil creatures. This is where I got major Beast House vibes, was in some of the early chapters describing the proclivities of the Ghoul as people came to fool around in the cemetery and find out a little too late what was lurking there. That gave me major, like I said, that gave me major Richard Lehman vibes as well, which, funny enough, after I read this book, I got into Brian Keene's old podcast, which was still going at the time, called The Horror Show, and found out that he was a Richard Lehman fan. So if you like Richard Lehman as well, I think you would also get a kick out of this book, because it's very Richard Lehman-ish, except I don't know, different, but in a good way, in a really good way, I think. This is man, this is such a good story because all the characters are so well done. It's very much Stand By Me. If you're familiar with Stand By Me by Stephen King, the movie or the short story, which I think is called something else completely. I'm sure Stephen King fans will let me know in the comments. I am a fan of Stephen King. I am not the most voracious reader of him. I have not read all of his books though, so I don't know if I have to lose my horror reader fan card now or not, but yeah. Anyway, because it's very much kids on bikes that notice something bad is happening in the cemetery and all their parents punish them for it, basically, when they try to tell them. There are deaths in this book that really stuck with me. And I think it's because Brian Keene, the author, does such a good job of bringing these characters to life that it really hurts when one of them dies. Even the bad characters that you wish would die, like the evil groundskeeper and stuff like that. I mean, you really get to know this guy. Yeah, there's so much there. I mean, most horror books, when someone dies, you almost root for it, right? Because you're rooting for the monster. It's like a slasher movie or something like that. You have your main characters, but you can usually right away tell which ones are the main characters, and then you're just going through the book, basically. And that's fun. But, you know, in this book, you really don't want anyone to die, at least none of the main cast, because he does such an amazing job of, like I said, really bringing these characters to life, giving each of them a distinct flavor. And I've read other books and stories by him since finding my way to Ghoul, and I will say that he, as an author, he's very consistent with that. There's not a lot of throwaway kills in his work. Every character basically has a purpose. You get to know them, and then you get to be sad a bit when they die. There's not a whole lot of blank faces, I guess. You know, like the policeman character is just known as the policeman or something like that. No, everyone usually has a name and a place, and you kind of get to know their reason for being in the area when the monster shows up. There is also a movie that came out based on this book. I have not actually seen the movie. I do think it might be available on Amazon, but I don't think you can. I think you have to like buy it or rent it. I don't think you can just stream it if you have Prime, but don't quote me on that. That might be completely wrong. Either way, I haven't seen it, so I can't really say if it's good or bad. But it is something I actually want to see. Yeah, if you want to read a book about a bunch of kids in the 80s finding their way to a very real monster that's killing someone, definitely check this book out. There's not too much I can really say without kind of spoiling the entire book, and I really don't want to, because like I said, so many of the deaths in this book, they hit hard, and I wouldn't want to ruin them for you. It's kind of like, you know, seeing someone reading Old Red and telling them the dogs die at the end. That's just not nice. That's spoiling it for them. And plus, like, you're not going to read and get invested. And that's also not what happens in this book, or at least not in the way you think. Whoever you think's going to die, you're wrong. So, pick up this book, read it. If you haven't read Brian Keene, I think this is a great book to start with. I honestly think it's one of his best works. I don't know if other longtime Brian Keene fans will agree with me. Once again, I have not read all of Brian Keene's books. I do know that the Clicker series is very popular, and I have yet to read that. But I have read, you know, like Dead Rising and stuff like that, which was really good, which I will do a review on at some point in this channel. But yeah, so instead of making this video too long, I will sum it up by once again saying, read Ghoul, get attached to the characters, you know, make yourself, light some candles, maybe get some tea, you know, just get some stuff that's going to make you feel happy when one of them dies, and thank me later. And also, if you have seen the movie, let me know in the comments if it's any good, because like I said, I do want to check it out. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys next time.